I became interested in JW doctrine, for it seems to hold water if some different verses are taken apart from the whole of Scripture. Since I'm sure the video I'm addressing was put out by JWs, I decided to use a JW Bible for this one, so that I may not be accused by them of quoting a mistranslation. Proverbs 8 was mentioned and is a good place to start. In verse 12 it says, quote, I, wisdom, dwell together with shrewdness. I have found knowledge and thinking ability. Unquote. It then describes this wisdom. Quote, I possess good advice, practical wisdom, power. Unquote. Verse 14. All the way to verse 22, which is what she alluded to in this video. Quote, Jehovah produced me as the beginning of his way, the earliest of his achievements of long ago. Unquote. So first off, it would seem as if God had no wisdom until he created it. We must consider this as well, that Jehovah produced this wisdom as, quote, the earliest of his achievements, unquote. But as Psalm 90 verse 2 states, from everlasting to everlasting you are God, unquote. He is the, quote, King of eternity, unquote. 1 Timothy 1 verse 17. Therefore, if this wisdom, which is the Word, Jesus Christ, I agree with that part of the doctrine, if this wisdom was brought forth as God's very first achievement, then that would mean that he came about before time. This in turn would mean that this verse is poetically speaking of how he eternally emanated from the Father. For, quote, Christ is the power of God and the wisdom of God, unquote. 1 Corinthians 1 verse 24. But if we were to follow the JW train of thought, we'd have to conclude that God had no wisdom or power before he invented it, which is self-destructive circular reasoning. Therefore, when the Jews asked for a sign, Jesus replied to them, quote, tear down this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up, unquote. John 2 verse 19. This is particularly interesting when Galatians 1 verse 1 is accounted for. Quote, Paul, an apostle, neither from men nor through a man, but through Jesus Christ and God the Father, who raised him up from the dead, unquote. So who raised him up, himself or God the Father? The answer is yes, quote, because it is in him that all the fullness of the divine quality dwells bodily, unquote. Colossians 2 verse 9. That's just one example, but what I found out about the JW doctrine is that it is made up of very sloppy theology, poor translation, and manuscripts that were rejected for a good reason. There are a few more verses that are carelessly bantered about. Example, 1 Corinthians 15:28, Revelations 3:14. But this must suffice for now. At any rate, this is why we need to, quote, test the spirits, unquote, 1 John 4 verse 1, because not every euphoric elation or spiritual illumination is from God. As the song says, watch out, brother, for that long black train. See Carm for more in-depth apologetics.